Alright, so I kind of just wanted to do a simpler second video for GPU June. I don't know, just because I felt like it. And it's pretty much what it says in the title. We're going to be attempting to play Half-Life 2 on these lovely GeForce 2 cards. Now, this might not seem all too terribly interesting, because if you're not really familiar with this time period and hardware, you kind of have to look at the timeline of things. So these cards came out in 2000. Half-Life 2 came out in late 2004, which, a 4-year gap doesn't really seem like much in today's, perspective, because, heck, a 6, 7, 8, probably older-year-old GPU can still play a lot of modern games at, pretty respectable frame rates and settings, where back then, if your GPU was, 3 or 4 years old, it was pretty much ancient history. You would have to crank all the settings, way down, lowest resolution, and you were maybe getting 30, 40 FPS. Or the card might just not even be able to play the game at all because, DirectX updates and stuff often would just completely obsolete your card. It was a little different for these cards because NVIDIA with the GeForce 4 MX series kind of forced DirectX 7 to stay around a lot longer than it normally would have, but even still, these cards would have just been too underpowered by 2004 to really play any modern games at any sort of respectable settings. But Half-Life 2 is a bit of a different case because despite it being a big AAA game with great for the time looking graphics and a whole bunch of other cool stuff, it was actually pretty well optimized and you could actually get it to run on pretty old hardware like this pretty decently, at least when it comes to the graphics cards. Maybe not so much older CPUs, which we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, I think Half-Life 2 is actually going to be able to play pretty decently on these two GeForce 2 cards that I have here, and of course there's not much point to this video. It's pretty unlikely that most people would have been playing Half-Life 2 on cards like these, but I just want to experiment, okay? It's just kind of a for fun thing, What if you had, cards like these for some reason still in 2004 and you wanted to play Half-Life 2? Would the experience be okay? Well, we're going to figure that out. So let's get this card out of the way, because it's honestly not as interesting as this card. Now, to those who are in the know, you can spot that bright blue PCB from a mile away. This is a Hercules-made card of the GeForce 2 GTS. And look at this thing. They sure don't make graphics cards like this anymore. Bright blue PCB, bright blue heat sinks on the RAM and on the CPU. That just looks beautiful. Yeah, so this is a GeForce 2 GTS, the original 32 megabyte version, which is going to be a little interesting for Half-Life 2 because I think the minimum that Valve lists is 64 megs of VRAM. So we'll see how that goes. Another interesting thing is that I actually have the box for this card. The 3D Prophet 2 GTS. It's certainly not the craziest looking GPU box, especially from back then. Just take a look at some of the Voodoo card boxes from back then. But yeah, it's just kind of cool. Thought I'd show off the box since I happen to have it. So yeah, this was the first GeForce 2 card to come out. There is a 64 meg version of this card, but I don't think it came out when the card launched. I think it came out a couple months later. So this pretty much is as original GeForce 2 as you can get. I actually don't know if this is clocked the same as a stock GeForce 2 or not. I haven't really compared the clock speeds ever. But oh well, it doesn't really matter. So this is definitely in the higher realm of the GeForce 2 line. There were quite a few other GeForce 2s. There was pretty much a GeForce 2 for any conceivable price point you can think of. So we'll take a look at another GeForce 2, which is a bit of a lower end GeForce 2. So this is a GeForce 2 MX 400. So this is sort of high end for the mid-range. So kind of mid-range, high end. I don't really know what this card retailed for. In fact, I don't even know what the GeForce 2 retailed for. Probably $200 something. And yes, I modded a fan onto here. Probably doesn't actually need it, but I just felt like it because I found this little fan that fits perfectly on there. So yeah, GeForce 2 MX 400. This was a great budget card. They sold like tons of these things. There is also the original MX, which is pretty similar to the 400. Then there's the MX 200, which we will not speak of. So as you can see, this one was made by MSI, and as an interesting contrast to the GTS, this actually has 64 megabytes of VRAM, so it'll be kind of interesting. Will the higher VRAM win out, or will the raw speed of the GeForce 2 win out? I'm kind of curious how this is going to play out, because I'm thinking the higher VRAM might actually win. So these aren't the oldest cards you could run Half-Life 2 on. I think any DirectX 7 card, in theory, should be able to run the game. So you could go back to like the original GeForce 256 or the original Radeon. But I don't have any of those, so this is what we're going to be testing out. Although we can kind of simulate a GeForce 256 because the MX 400 is commonly called the poor man's GeForce 256 because the performance of it is very, very similar to the GeForce 256. So we can kind of get an idea of what that would perform like. And also, I don't know what the MX 400 is clocked at. It's probably, you know, the reference clock speeds, but it's probably not going to make a massive difference. Now, like I said, if we were to use a machine from when the GeForce 2 cards were, you know, still relevant, Half-Life 2 wouldn't fare as well on there because despite it being very optimized for GPUs, when it comes to the CPU, it really needs a lot of, needs a lot of power because of all the physics and all that kind of AI and stuff. So we're going to be using a bit of a newer machine. This is my main Windows 98 machine. So in here we have a 2.8 gigahertz Prescott Pentium 4. No hyperthreading, but that's fine. Games didn't really take advantage of hyperthreading, so it's not a big deal. It's probably not the best CPU you could have had for Half-Life 2. An Athlon 64 would definitely be a better option here, but like I said, you wouldn't be using a GeForce 2 card realistically in a machine like this anyways, unless, like, I don't know, your main video card died and you had to go use your old one or something like that. Or maybe you just upgraded the rest of your system for some reason, couldn't afford a new GPU, I don't know. It's not a very realistic scenario, but we're just having a bit of fun. We have a gig of DDR in dual channel, clocked at 400 megahertz, which is good because Half-Life 2, especially the original release, really doesn't like machines with like 512 megabytes of RAM or something like that. So a gig should be enough. And this is on an 8-bit AI7 motherboard, which is an Intel 865 chipset board. Very good board. Highly recommended if you can find one of these. Except for the chipset fan. I took that out because it sucked. We also have an All-Real Vortex 2 down there. Doesn't really matter in this case. And I swapped out the SD card that I normally have Windows 98 on and put in a different one for Windows XP, which is what most people would have been running Half-Life 2 on. Supposedly you can get Windows 98 to run Half-Life 2. I've tried, I haven't been able to get it to work, but 2000 or XP will work better, and I just went with XP, Service Pack 2 in this case, but we'll take a little bit more look at the software once we actually fire it up. And the main video card I normally have in here is a GeForce 4 Ti 4200, 64 megabyte, which is a great card for Windows 98, great card for, you know, early XP stuff, but of course we're going to take it out and plop in our GeForce 2 cards. Alright, so now let's move over to our brand new VGA capture setup. Crossing my fingers because I haven't actually tested it yet. Alright, so here we are in our normally 98 machine, but today it's XP Service Pack 2, and 2.8 gigahertz Pentium 4, gig of RAM, and yeah, so we have the GeForce 2 GTS in there at the moment, and if we go to our driver settings, you can see we're using Forceware 7184, which I believe is the latest one for the GTS. I think the MX cards got a few more driver versions for whatever specific reason, but yeah, 7184 and 32 megs of RAM running at AGP 4X. So we're just going to go ahead and get right into the game. and this is the original launch version of Half-Life 2. So, which came out in November of 2004. It's not the modern Steam version. If you tried to run the modern Steam version on here, it would run horribly. I can pretty much assure you of that. I mean, I couldn't even get that to run well on like a Pentium 4 and a GeForce 6800. That's how more intensive it is. Oh, good old node graph, out of date. Now if we go into the video here, this is just the options it auto-picked, so that's what it recommends. So 800 by 600, medium model detail, obviously no anti-aliasing. There's no way I'd be able to handle that. Low texture detail, obviously because we have only 32 megs of RAM. Bilinear, simple reflections. Apparently it thinks it can handle high shader detail, low shadow detail, and no VSync. And I forgot to enable fraps, so we can easily see the FPS, because sure, you can just use the built-in source one, but the text is really small on that. We'll go ahead and start a new game just so we can watch the intro, but we'll probably go to some more intensive levels in a little bit.
Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman. Rise and shine.
So we're not pretty good, over 60 FPS. I mean, sure, it's just G-Man's face, but like, it's pretty good. Okay, 40s, yeah, so definitely getting more effects and stuff, but still, it's not bad when you consider how old of a card this was compared to the game's launch date. Especially with only 32 megabytes of RAM. It's really not doing that bad at the moment. It's better than the original Xbox. And I know part of the problem with the original Xbox was the CPU, just not being able to handle all the physics and stuff. Because the GPU is actually, at least theoretically, way more powerful than the GeForce 2 is. But we're getting 60 at the moment, so actually working pretty decently, all things considered. This is actually better than I was expecting. We're getting a lot of screen tearing because no VSync, but I don't want to turn that on. I just want to see theoretically how fast can it run the game, you know? And, you know, running in DirectX 7 with low texture detail, it doesn't look as great, but it still looks fine. Like, it's still totally playable. Of course, City 17 isn't the most visually interesting area in the game, but I don't think it'll hurt the appearance of the game, you know, too much. And I wouldn't even be surprised if some of the frame drops and hitches that we might see, I wouldn't be surprised if that's not a fault of the CPU, because 2.8 gigahertz Pentium 4 was definitely pretty decent, you know, in 2004, but it wasn't, like, amazing. You know, you definitely would have wanted, like, an Athlon 64 or something for this game. But yeah, I'm impressed at how often it's staying above 60 FPS. I definitely don't think you could have ran like a Far Cry or something this well on a card this old. Maybe we should try that one day, but I know Half-Life 2 here, as you can see, it's pretty well optimized. Definitely could not have run Doom 3 on this card. I mean, you could barely run Doom 3 on like a GeForce 4 and still have it like at these like 800 by 600. Like, come on. Like, this is handling it like a champ. Yes, we are gonna cheat a little bit because I don't want to have to wait for all the story stuff to, you know, get done. How well is it gonna hold up the city square? 40? Not terrible. 50, 60? Kind of depends on where you're looking at. I think it's getting a little higher on the FPS. Again, some of this might be the CPU, but I don't think it's the main cause. At least not... because we're not really doing much with physics and stuff at the moment. Yeah, definitely particle effects, stuff like that's not going to be too great, but... you know, not bad. It's holding up pretty well. definitely, you know, playable. If I had to use this card for whatever reason back in the day to play this game, certainly would have had a, you know, okay enough experience. Alright, well, let's go to a different chapter. Let's go to Water Hazard, pretty iconic area. And we can get to see how the water reflections look. Probably not going to look the greatest, but we'll see. 60, 70? Not bad at the moment. Hundreds? Wow. Oh, the physics. Oh, that was definitely a CPU thing with the physics, I'm pretty sure. It's getting like 70, 80. The water reflections definitely do not look very good. I don't think it is. I don't think it even is reflecting anything. I mean, we do have the simple reflections enabled, but even just like the water just doesn't look very realistic. And you know, we also don't have like programmable shaders or anything like that. I've played games at much lower FPS than this back in the day, like Minecraft and stuff. Oh boy, I must have played that at like 5 FPS. I play that all day long. I mean, you know, when you have no other option, you'll succumb to desperate measures. And you know, like, this experience isn't even that bad on here. This is pretty good. And of course, you could get even a better experience if you go down to like 640 by 480. I'm actually kind of curious what that would be like. Because that'll kind of confirm whether or not it's a CPU or a GPU limitation. I have a feeling it's kind of a result of both. And nope, the screen capture's fine. I thought the screen capture messed up for a minute. Oh, now it's at like, what, 100 FPS? So we're running at effectively the same resolution as the original Xbox version. And it's running pretty well. Yeah, this is great. This is honestly, here, I'm going to turn on VSync just to see what it does. I'm really curious. Solid 60? Dude, this feels... Oh, it feels so much better without the screen tearing. Oh, dude, this is perfect. This is totally playable. And, like, on a CRT, like, I'm playing this on a CRT right now. I'm sure it probably doesn't look as good with the screen capture and stuff, but now I think it's about time we switch over to the MX400 just to give ourselves an idea of what that's going to do for us. And here we are with the MX400. So, AGP4X, 64 megs of RAM, and same driver version. And let's just go ahead and see how this runs on there. The settings, it appears to have had the same settings, except it set the shadow. No, actually, wait, nope, these are the same settings. I was gonna say they changed the, I thought it said shader detail, but no, this is the exact same settings as the MX, or the GTS. So let's see how this handles it. The larger frame buffer definitely is going to help a little bit, but I don't know if the weakened GPU core itself is going to be able to hold up as well in the game.
Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman.
I'm pretty sure the GTS was faster than this already.
Not that I wish to imply you have been sleeping on the job. No one is more deserving.
Okay, yeah, it definitely was not dropping down to the 20s. That's for sure.
Would have gone to waste until, well, let's just say your hour has come again.
Ooh, it almost dropped to like 20 flat. Things are not looking good for the MX card. Okay, so came out to like 40 FPS. Yeah, this is definitely weaker of a card. It's not unplayable, at least at the moment, but yeah, I don't know.
So like 40s instead of, I'm pretty sure it was getting pretty close to 60 on the GTS. So I guess the larger memory size is not as big of a help as I thought it might be. The GTS was holding up really well with its just meager 32 megs. Definitely not quite as good of an experience, like down to 30 and stuff. Yeah. Definitely things could be better, but again, still, when you consider the gap in time, you know, between these cards and the game, it's still pretty good. And this was like a, you know, a mainstream kind of low-end, not really low-end card, but, you know, I don't know what this card retailed for, but it was definitely less than like $200, I know that. And the frame rate would probably be a lot better if we had, if we lowered the shader detail, and we'll lower the resolution again. We'll kind of do the same thing. So go to water hazard. And the draw distance is still pretty low for a lot of objects, which is kind of annoying when it comes to like the wood that's in the way, because it kind of comes at you really quickly. Like I know there's supposed to be wood here. Actually, nope. See, like, I don't even know. Definitely supposed to be wood here, and I'm not seeing it until just now. So that's pretty annoying. Yeah, so this is like... Alright, let's just stay right here. 42? Let's go ahead and lower our resolution. See how that works. So 60. So that actually gave us like 20 extra FPS. Oh, this feels way better. At 640 by 480. Okay, this is definitely way better. So, yeah, 800 by 600 might have been a little unrealistic. Kind of surprised it chose the same preset. But it's what it did. And, yeah, this is a lot more playable. In fact, I kind of want to turn on VSync just to see how much better it is. And of course, the game would run a lot better if I also turned down the shader detail, but then the game would look even worse than it already does, which, I mean, it's already not looking fantastic, but, you know. How did I get stuck? Really? Okay, yeah. So, VSync, as you can see, it's dropping down to like 30, because it's, what, double buffer? Or is that triple buffer? I think it's double buffer. So yeah, dropping it down to like 30 and stuff, not great. So you probably want to have VSync turned off. It's still performing pretty admirably though, all things considered. But this is not too shabby. You know, down to 30, but that could have also been a physics thing too. I think it did that on the GTS. Oh, that's right, we didn't see how explosions and particle effects kind of hinder performance. Okay, we're down to 30. Yeah, the GTS was definitely doing this better. That's for sure. Ooh, come on. Kind of curious how, especially the GTS, would compare to, say, an MX440, because that was like the main reason that DirectX 7 is even stuck around, was because of the GeForce 4 MX cards. So it'd be kind of interesting to compare this to an MX440, but or a 460, but nobody owns one of those. But yeah, that would definitely be for a different video. I just wanted this to be a really short, quick, kind of easy video to put together, and just kind of goof around, have a little bit of fun. And, this is definitely fun, because I wasn't expecting this to run as well as it did. You know, I definitely would rather play this than the original Xbox version, which is an impressive version in its own right, but the poor Xbox's Pentium 3 just cannot handle the physics of this game at all. You know, it's like 20 FPS a lot of the time. It's like, ew, I don't know about that, but yeah, I think we're gonna call it here with the video. I hope it wasn't too boring for any of you, but, you know, just kind of a simpler, very simple video for GPU June. I was planning a bit of a more elaborate second video, but I have another pretty big project in the pipeline that's coming up next, and I definitely want to devote more time to that. So, yeah, thank you guys for watching. It's been a I've really appreciated being able to be a part of GPU June too. So, again, go check out all the other GPU June content. Check out my first video for GPU June 2. And, you know, I'm saying this from the past, but I'm sure there's been a lot of great content being put out. So definitely go give it a watch. And, again, thanks to Nathan from Pixel Pipes for putting this whole thing together. It's really been a lot of fun. So, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.